All right, hey, it's Tom Jordan. So glad to have you here on a Wednesday. Got a very important program today, as we always do, right? Every single day here on Tom Jordan Live. But we are under now 2 weeks away from the presidential election, and I'm thinking, that chasing votes with marijuana and free forgivable loans isn't exactly a vision for the future, but that seems to be Kamala Harris's strategy while Donald Trump is campaigning on the economy and on freedom and meeting with real middle class voters seemingly every single day. So we got some latest polls out there right now. I just want to read from some battleground states because today Donald Trump's going to be in the state of Georgia, and in Georgia right now, Trump is ahead by 4. That's a state that he lost in 2020, by I think about 12,000 votes. So it was a narrow loss back in 2020, but he's up by 4 points there. North Carolina, Trump up versus Kamala Harris by 2. That's the Insider Advantage poll. And in Nevada, Trump is up 49 to 47 as well. And of course, Michigan, the great state of Michigan, Donald Trump is now up by 2, 46 to 44. That's the latest Trafalgar group poll that just came out. Obviously, some of the far left states like New York, Trump is down by 19, but that's expected. But that's a lower gap, a smaller gap than it had been in years past, elections past. There's another very interesting statistic, and we're going to get to our guest here in just a moment. But the latest polls show that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are in, of course, the statistical dead heat when you look at the general election nationwide. But Donald Trump is making these serious gains among Latino and Black voters, these voter groups that have traditionally leaned Democrat. And a lot of experts say it's not just me, but the focus from Donald Trump on the economic concerns and crime that does exist and is going up in this country, despite what you may have heard from some liberal journalists. I think this is all resonating with the voters in a whole slew of demographics, especially with men. Well, Kamala Harris's campaign, struggling to maintain momentum, is pivoted to these forgivable small business loans and marijuana legalization to attempt to attract Black voters. To me, it's condescending to go that route. Even Barack Obama's attempt to rally support by scolding Black men, I think, is backfiring, at least or risks backfiring. They don't want to be talked that way. There is a splintering Democratic, I think, coalition as well. It's not just Kamala Harris that's being impacted here. We have Alyssa Slotkin. She is feeling it in her home state of Michigan, where the abandoned Harris movement, it began in the state of Michigan. It's now expanding to several other states, battleground states, abandoned Harris. And so it's highlighting this growing divide within the Democratic base as Muslim voters, who are traditionally aligned with Democrats and are rejecting Kamala Harris and other Democrats as well, Alyssa Slotkin being another, over a lot of these foreign policy failures in their view. Now, I might disagree on their positioning on certain foreign policy decisions as it relates to Israel and Gaza and Palestine, but it's not boding well for the Kamala Harris campaign, losing that key voting bloc. And it just reveals this crack in this coalition Democrats have long relied on to secure these swing states like in Michigan. So we're going to speak with Jamie Rowe, a very savvy political consultant, in just a few seconds. Hang tight right there. Also, just a reminder, we'd love for you to chime in. Be a part of this conversation. You can ask Jamie Rowe questions yourself, or you could just comment if you would like, or you can just ask me or whoever. Whatever you want to say, put it in the comments section, whether it's on Facebook or on X, on YouTube, wherever you are. I'll get to those in a moment as well. Also, the best way you can help Tom Jordan Live is simply to watch our content and subscribe, if you will. It's free to subscribe. Click the notification bell, which reminds you of new content that we're putting up throughout the day, Monday through Friday. Okay, yesterday was indicative of how these campaigns are going. Donald Trump tightening his grip on Latino voters, holding a round table with these key Latino leaders in Miami, just hours after a new poll showed him leading Vice President Kamala Harris by 11 points in that critical demographic. So that event, which was held at Trump National Doral, Miami, featured a whole slew of prominent figures like Florida Representatives Maria Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, Senator Rick Scott, Miami Mayors Francis Suarez, the Miami mayor, supporting Donald Trump, turning that city around, trying to skirt away from these far-left liberal policies that are hurting municipalities. Donald Trump didn't hold back during that event as well yesterday, accusing Kamala Harris of being absent from the campaign trail. She's sleeping right now, he said. And you'd think with 2 weeks left, she'd be working. But, he says he's gone 52 days straight without a break. And he's as energetic as ever. And he says he's going to keep going right through Election Day as well. So, all right. So Donald Trump's numbers surged with Latino voters. His campaign emphasizing, their confidence, saying that the Latino community knows that Donald J. Trump is the only candidate who can restore prosperity. The polling again shows him at 49% among Latino voters versus Kamala Harris's 38%. Wow, that is a huge shift. This landscape, major, even as Kamala Harris attempts to counter with promises of no interest loans and expanded child care benefits. And as I mentioned before, the forgivable loans and the, free down payments for a house. But there are other minority blocs that are abandoning Kamala Harris and other Democratic candidates. More Arabs and Muslims are supporting Donald Trump. And as we've seen, the Muslim mayor of Hamtramck, a city with an all-Muslim city council, endorsing Donald Trump and fleeing these other candidates in these down ballot races as well, such as the U.S. Senate, supporting Mike Rogers over Alyssa Slotkin. I want to get into all of this. It's not just the presidential race, but the theme of abandoning the Democratic Party and going behind Donald Trump or other Republicans in these various races is happening all across the country, including in Michigan, a key battleground state. Let's go to Jamie Rowe, the founder of Team Rowe, who has also worked on Capitol Hill for many years as chief of staff of a long-serving member of Congress who I happen to know as well. So, Jamie, joining me now on Tom Jordan Live. Jamie, it's so good to have you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Morning, Tom. Great to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. So, I know you're very active in this, and you're watching what's happening around the country, but particularly what's happening in your state of Michigan and these down ballot races. But before we get to that, do you have any thoughts on some of these Democrats who have been abandoning their party? We've seen RFK Jr. do this. Now we see yesterday Tulsi Gabbard coming out announcing not only that she had left the Democratic Party a while ago, but now she's joining the Republican Party. What do you think the reasonings are behind these moves?
I think what we have right now is the sort of the creation of a new Republican Party, which is a working class based on working class voters, rural voters, and people who believe in the cause of freedom, who want to have a strong economy, who want to have America strong on the world stage, but don't want conflict. I'll just say this: we saw a very stark example of it yesterday when you had Liz Cheney on stage with Kamala Harris, and you had Tulsi Gabbard tearing up her Democrat card and joining the GOP. If the trade we get to make is Tulsi Gabbard for Liz Cheney, I'll make that trade all day long.
Any day. And it's no big surprise that Liz Cheney and those of her ilk are doing this. And there's a surprising number of, so-called Republicans coming behind Kamala Harris who is so far to the left. And that boggles my mind. I don't see how any conservative can get behind a Kamala Harris type who has advocated for everything, it seems to me, that Republicans and conservatives are against. It's not just abortion; it's the whole idea of free speech and censorship and the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. All these issues that conservatives say they support. I mean, even
Right.
education and these. So I don't understand that, and it's I know that even Rick Snyder has come out and I don't know where he stands with Kamala Harris, the former governor of Michigan, but he's now come out and said that he is not going to get involved in this. We know that he voted for Joe Biden back in 2020 or supported him at very least. Why is that mentality existing, do you think, within the Republican Party for some?
I, I don't think that mentality is within the Republican Party. The Republican Party is firmly behind Donald J. Trump to be our next president of the United States. The folks that are coming out in favor of Kamala, who perhaps at one time were Republicans, all they want is the big Washington swamp to continue. Donald Trump has promised change. I love the idea personally of the Elon Musk Department of Government Efficiency to come in and basically dismantle the bloated federal government that's bankrupting this country. and there are people who are heavily invested in that swamp in their life, and they will do anything they can to defend it. And I personally, the loss of those people means nothing to our coalition. Our coalition is growing. You talked earlier about Hispanics, polls showing Donald Trump winning with Hispanics, a growing number of African Americans, particularly younger men, uh, Muslim voters. And one thing I think that you you missed sort of on the reason why Muslim voters are coming around to Donald Trump is that they are discovering also that the Democrat Party does not share their values. They do not want men in their daughters' locker rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a father of two daughters who played
Mm-hmm.
sports, and that issue just drives me nuts. How on earth we think that that's fair is beyond me. And the Democrat Party's just sort of lost touch with this and tried to force these woke values down our throats, and people aren't buying it, and they're rejecting them. So
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
glad you
you
said
see
that, Jamie,
this
because it is
growing
a t-
coalition.
there is. It's a big tent, is what it is. And I think that it never really made sense to me anyway why Muslims supported Democrats, and for that matter, why Democrats were feigning that they support Muslims, because they have very contradictory ideas and ideologies. If you study Islam whatsoever, they are completely opposed to the vast majority of things that Democrats support. And you mentioned just one of them, the whole idea of allowing biological men into a girl's locker room, or the things that they are teaching in our schools. And in Dearborn, Michigan, which is the highest concentration of Muslims in the country, when they found out what the Dearborn schools were teaching their kids in these books that they were putting in their schools, the Muslim community, I think they kind of woke up and said, "What is this party that we're dealing with? Why are these perverted things being taught to our very young children? How to have sex with someone of the same gender? Why is that being taught in my school?" We're completely opposed to that. The Muslim community came out and said that. And I know the media tried to bury a lot of those protests as well, because this is not very comfortable acknowledgement for any member of the media, for the most part, and the Democratic Party to come to terms with them face to face. But it is something, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm also glad you brought up the whole idea that the Republican Party has grown. I think its footprint. When you look at the number of people that are beginning to wake up, you could put aside the Liz Cheneys in those as well. I do want to touch on this because you mentioned something. You mentioned the swamp, and Tulsi Gabbard yesterday was so right on to point out that, denouncing Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney as part of this coalition that supports the military industrial complex. Like, they're the ones that want these forever wars to exist. And Liz Cheney's dad's background in the military industrial complex as well. That would be Dick Cheney and his endless wars. Why does her alliance with Trump, do you think, Tulsi Gabbard I'm speaking of, emphasize, or how does it emphasize this shift away from this interventionism that we're seeing overseas, and towards focusing more on domestic issues?
Yeah, you know what? Because there's a track record. Donald Trump was president for 4 years. During those 4 years, not only were no new wars started, he crushed ISIS, which needed to be done, and then he made peace with others around the world. He brought the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, and I think this is something else that perhaps Muslim and Arab American voters are understanding, that they may not be right there with Donald Trump on staunch support for Israel, but they also saw that he was a peacemaker and he tried to bring peace and stability. He also strangled Iran, which and did so without firing a shot. He did it through sanctions and tightening the grip on them to make certain that they couldn't bring in oil revenue. And that Iran was broke and they could not fund the mayhem that they funded across the Middle East in places like Lebanon, or with Hamas, or with the Houthi rebels, or other places where Iranian interference and infusion of their money causes mayhem. And he brought peace over there. And you saw peace. Even Israel was talking about making peace with Saudi Arabia. And there's none of that going on today. We've got this unending war in the Middle East. We've got the unending war in Ukraine. And the one thing nobody's talking about is peace, other than Donald Trump. He does not want to send America's sons and daughters off to fight and die in foreign wars. He wants to bring peace in economic cooperation with other countries on a level playing field. And fact of the matter is, he has a track record to prove what he says he's going to do because he did all of those things while he was president. And the other thing at the end of the day is he'll also shut down the border. And people are losing their minds about watching the mayhem that we have on the southern border, and they want it stopped. This administration, the Biden Harris administration, is obviously a complete failure on that issue. And their enablers in Congress, like Alyssa Slotkin, were right there with them the whole way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, the level of peace that we found, Donald Trump was able to do things that other people and, advisors told him were impossible. I mean, just moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem was a major move, something that other previous presidents had promised they would do, and they never did. Donald Trump said he would do it, and he did do it. And it was a wonderful thing. And he got the support of Jews and Israelis over there, and they love Donald Trump in Israel, which a lot of Americans don't realize. To the degree that he helped that country out while he was president, and you can understand why a lot of them now do not like Joe Biden because of the chaos that has now been allowed to occur because of the support and the funding that this country has allowed, the United States has allowed Iran to have under the Biden administration. And it does make me wonder, there's a lot of talk about, well, Joe Biden appears to be weak. And that's why there's all these wars that, these Vladimir Putins of the world and the Kim Jong-uns are stepping up. But I think there's more to it. So it's almost as if he supports actively these regimes like Iran by allowing them to have this kind of funding. It's weakness, but it's also some maybe subtle support underneath the surface, which just also is a very confusing thing to me.
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to notice, I mean, particularly here in Michigan, we got this big Senate race going on right now.
Yeah,
And
let's talk about that. Yeah.
Alyssa Slotkin likes to tout her experience at the CIA and the Defense Department. And one of the things that she did while there was she was one of the chief architects of the original Iran nuclear deal, which sent pallets of cash to the Iranian regime and loosened sanctions and restrictions on them. And basically, as Trump would say, made them rich. Trump came in, he put a stop to that, he cut off Iran's money and shut them down. Uh, and when the Biden Harris administration came in and their enablers like Slotkin, they opened up the cash spigots again to Iran, and we've seen what the results are. And the other thing about Slotkin that I found particularly troubling is that after Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the chief terrorist in Tehran, basically with countless amount of American blood on his hands from Iraq in particular. Her reaction to that was to introduce a piece of legislation to tie President Trump's hands on dealing with Iran. I don't know. I don't understand why they seem to believe that the way to make peace with Iran is to appease them. But all it's proven to do is cause more mayhem, more war, and more death across the Middle East, which is why Iran needs to be reined in. Donald Trump did it once, and he'll do it again.
Yeah, no, she says she is a CIA data analyst, which she was, and she did serve in Iraq and was in Baghdad. I know someone there who served with her, and they portray a different Alyssa Slotkin than the one that she portrays nowadays. But in the recent debate, one of them with Mike Rogers, she accused of Mike Rogers of supporting this, this war against Iraq. And he fired back at her and said, well, listen, we were using the intelligence that you provided us. You're part of that CIA back at that time as a data analyst to provide us information that turned out not to be true. And do you know, I mean, was she serving during that time? Is that part of her resume as a CIA data analyst?
Yeah, well, obviously she was working for the CIA early in the Iraq War. I don't think she put
Yeah.
together the intel that was handed to members of Congress, but she certainly was a part of the organization and touts her work with that organization as one of the primary reasons why people should vote for her. And the fact of the matter is, in the CIA, in in the lead up to the Iraq War and in the early days of the Iraq War was almost dead wrong about everything. And I was in Washington. I was working in Washington D.C. in 2003, and supportive of the effort. I mean, we were all in the aftermath of 9/11, and we never wanted something like that to happen again on our soil, and move forward with that, with the conflict with Iraq. I think now, if you look back 20 plus years on that, we all have to realize it was a mistake. We had to go into Afghanistan to take care of Al Qaeda after the attack on 9/11. But the war in Iraq was a war of choice, and it was a bad choice. And if we don't understand that now, uh, then we're not being honest with ourselves. And I think
Yeah, and speaking of
everybody
being honest,
understands
yeah, I don't
that.
think she's being honest too, because in that debate she also talked about we can't be in these forever wars. We cannot go. She was kind of exhibiting this support for Israel, but then pulling back and saying we got to watch how actively involved we become with defending Israel against Hamas and Hezbollah and these Houthi rebels and Iran in general. What do you think she meant by that?
You know what? I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, October 7th would have never happened had Iran not been enriched by the cash that was sent to them by the Biden administration. If they were not allowed to sell oil on the open market, they would have no money. And this return of assets, oh, it's only going to be used for humanitarian purposes. If you believe that, I have a bridge in Tehran to sell you. It is absolutely their whole policy uh, vis-a-vis Iran is incomprehensible to me, because if there's ever been a group that's been proven to be the cause of most of the issues within the Middle East, it's Iran. And for some reason, they keep empowering and enriching Iran, and it needs to stop. If Donald Trump, it will be stopped.
Yeah, it's a swampy place, Congress. And I know you worked with a member of Congress who I greatly respect, Candace Miller, for quite some time on Capitol Hill. And she and you both understand the importance of economics and economic policy. So now we have this really is the main issue, and it should be in front and center in this presidential race. And even if you're talking about the Senate races here in Michigan and these various down ballot races as well, the economy is what matters and what is hurting people right now. So Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, they have completely different ideas what makes for a strong economy. So what do you make of this attempt by, Donald Trump talking about, lowering taxes, which leads to lower inflation, drilling again, resupplying our energy in this country. We have all this liquid gold underneath our feet, but you have a Kamala Harris who has pushed back against that and instead wants to have taxpayer funding to give forgivable loans to black men who want to start businesses. Here's government taxpayer money to help you succeed. We want to give you $25,000 in a down payment for your house. All these more taxpayer subsidies, she believes, at least she says, is going to fix the economy. There's two different approaches. I mean, how do you analyze both those?
Well, one has faith in government and one has faith in the American people. Donald Trump trusts the American people. The thing I find laughable is when the Democrats run these ads on TV saying that Donald Trump wants to cut taxes for his billionaire buddies. What are the big tax cuts that Donald Trump has proposed? No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and write off your car loan interest. All of those help middle class families. Every last one of them helps middle class families. And it's not a government giveaway for taking a certain course of action. It's you being able to keep your own money to make decisions for yourself on how you serve your family. That is absolutely the difference. In the Democrats is another big program after another big program after a giveaway for selected favored groups that always work out poorly. I mean, all you have to do is look at their big infrastructure deal where they had $7.3 billion to build electric car charging stations that built 8 charging stations. That's how government works. If you want
Right.
to flush more of your cash down the Washington toilet, elect the Democrats.
Yeah, and a lot of those charging stations don't even work, and EV owners know this. They'll pull up and they're hoping, crossing their fingers, that this one is going to actually be operational, and a lot of times they're not. I want to talk about the voting aspect of this because Donald Trump has said yesterday, I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna vote early," and a lot of people should do that. That's a different strategy than years past because we didn't used to be allowed to have this huge window of time to vote. I know in Michigan it kicks off this Saturday. How are the Republicans viewing this now in totality in terms of the importance of coming out early and casting their votes?
I think we learned a very valuable lesson in 2020, in particular, and also in 2022, where I mean, I think there's some rightful skepticism of some with voting by mail. They may not trust it completely. I'll be honest with you, I don't trust it completely. I intend to vote early in person on Saturday. And this year, there has been a concerted effort by the Republican Party and groups like Elon Musk's America PAC that have really gone out there and encouraged people to either vote by mail, to bank their vote, to get it done early, and so they can go out and do other things, and also make certain that for whatever reason something happens on election day, you don't get to vote. And the results across the country right now, not just here in Michigan, but across the country, are that Republicans have dramatically increased the absentee in early vote in places across the nation. I keep seeing reports the last couple of days about Nevada, where Democrats have dominated mail-in and early votes, and Republicans are now leading in Nevada in early votes. We've seen it in Georgia, in places in red counties across Georgia, where the early vote has been embraced and the Republican turnout's been big. And in Michigan, we don't have party registration, so it's not as easy to quantify. But some analysis that I've seen of ballots that have been requested and returned is a seriously large uptick in conservative and Republicans opting to vote early. And I think it's important not just to make certain that your vote counts and it doesn't. If for some whatever reason you can't vote on election day, it's that when the Democrats dominate the early vote, and I'll take the 2022 election in particular with Governor Whitmer, her campaign at the start of the season was 100% liberal and so forth. Got a bunch of people, Democrat left leaning people, to get their vote absentee, get their ballots in September, early October. And that allows you then to pivot your message. And by the end of the campaign, you would have thought Whitmer was the biggest conservative under the sun, because she had already banked all the liberal votes, and now she had a strategic advantage to go after conservative votes at the end of the campaign. We cannot let them do that. We need to bank our votes and hold their feet to the fire on every issue across the sun. Do not give the Democrats any strategic advantage in how your vote is cast. I'm voting, as I said, I'm voting early. My early voting location here in Macomb Township opens up Saturday morning. I'm going to be among the first in line to go show my ID, get my ballot, and put it in the tabulator. That's the other thing I like about it is mail-in vote. You got to trust that it gets put into the tabulator. When it's me casting an in-person early vote, I put it in the tabulator.
Yeah, right. You got a chain of custody that you're observing yourself. And yeah, I think you're right. You got to show your ID. You put it in the tabulator yourself. I'm going to vote early as well. For the first time in my life, I will be voting early, but I'll be doing it in person, much like you will be in Macomb. I'll be doing it at my polling location also. I don't trust the mail-in ballot. I have friends who have, I think they've voted, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and they're still getting notifications that, hey, you haven't cast your ballot yet. It's like, no, I did already. I've done that, and it's a very alarming thing. And to that point, you mentioned the ID here, and I'll bring this up just because we're talking. I know you've spoken in the past about, election integrity and protecting the vote and those types of very important things. And there's a lot of concern overseas because my understanding is this, that if you are overseas, the secretaries of state in various states, including, I believe, in Michigan with Jocelyn Benson, she is going to allow ballots to be received, I think, until, 7 days after the election is over, until the 12th of November. And the key aspect to that is that's 7 days for someone say, and they may not even look at the postmark on those things. I think there's a law that says it's got to be postmarked by the election, but they might just kind of ignore that in order to give people the opportunity to vote wherever they are around the world and protect the military kind of thing. Are you concerned, though, about the fact that there's a lot of these safeguards that have been seemingly stripped away, like photo ID or signature verification, or even now the postmark by election day of November 5th, maybe kind of being just, look the other way on those types of things? And the acknowledgement that Iran is actively involved in this election in the United States. Is it possible, in your view, that maybe some Iranian activists can start funneling these absentee ballots from Tehran or elsewhere around the world in order to infiltrate this election?
Yeah, I don't know about that type of foreign interference, but what I find very troubling about this overseas voting, I mean, if you're an American citizen and you happen to be in the military station overseas, or you're working at an American embassy, something like that, I have no issue with you participating in the election. Please do. I would encourage everybody like to do that.
Yes.
But what they're doing now is they have people who for whatever reasons live someplace overseas. They may well be citizens, but what they're doing is allowing them to vote in whatever state they choose,
Hmm.
and whether they have any connection to it or not. So somebody who, let's say they lived in Texas early in their life, and parents took them away and they moved to you know Lithuania. When they vote now, they can say, "Oh, go ahead and vote in Michigan. Go ahead and vote in Arizona." And the Democrats have an organized effort to direct these votes, who they think that they're going to get, to swing states. And that is simply wrong. In order to vote in Michigan, you have to have some sort of connection to Michigan, or you should anyway. And the fact of the matter is, with Jocelyn Benson, every single decision that she's made in the administration of elections benefits Democrats. Every single time. She's been taken to court and lost in court on multiple occasions, and then gave, hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations to Supreme Court justices that just happened to vote her way on every election issue. So yeah, she is a problem. One thing that encourages me is the fact that the RNC and others have made significant investment in an effort to secure the vote. And we're going to have poll watchers and people just making sure at the polling places that everything is done fair and above board. And quite honestly, with the actions of this Secretary of State, those people are needed more than ever right now, because this waiting for a week long vote, man, I'm sorry. We cannot have that. The American people deserve to know on election night who their next president's going to be and who our next senator is going to be here in Michigan.
I hope that's the case because we're just expanding this window. It is making it easier to cheat. And I think Elon Musk was right to call Jocelyn Benson a liar, as Jocelyn Benson is claiming that she wants to stop disinformation from going on. She's the one that's allowing disinformation to continue evening out of her own mouth, ignoring the fact that there are 500,000 voters right now on the voter rolls, 500,000 more than there are actually legitimate legal voters of voting age in the state of Michigan. She's pretending, well, they're going to be dealt with, but in 2027, after I decide to run for governor, then after that race, certainly not now, we're going to deal with it. And it's a bunch of disinformation that she's putting out there. By the way, Dana Nessel, Governor Whitmer, they're very active, as you've noticed. I've noted last night, I think on X, I saw you talking about these videos that they're putting out to try on TikTok and on X, and they're dancing around cheerleading these individuals who are seemingly wanting to be these, social media influencers and stars, rather than doing their duty in office right now, just a week and a half before an election.
Yeah. I don't think, first of all, I don't think we have a governor right now. I mean, Governor Whitmer seems to spend her day making TikTok videos, cringy ones. I know everybody saw the video she made with the uh,
The
liberal
Dorito.
podcaster,
Yeah, yeah, right.
you know, mocking Holy Communion. I'm
Hmm.
sorry, she cannot convince me that was about the Chips Act.
Right.
I'm an elder in my church at St. Peter Macomb Lutheran Church here in Macomb Township, and serving Holy Communion is one of the most sacred things that we do, and I don't think people understand what that means to us. And I know Catholics and others feel the same way. And that video was offensive. And the apology was sorry if you were offended. Uh, they are just turning their backs on people. And then yet Dana Nessel dancing around, yesterday telling
Yeah.
MSU students to get out and vote. That really isn't the job of our constitutional officers of this state. And then, Jocelyn Benson's out, and she may not be making TikTok videos, but she's out on MSNBC every single day, talking to her left wing buddies about what a great job she's doing here in making it easier to cheat in Michigan. And I would much rather have elected officials who are focused on actually doing the job and serving the people in Michigan than they are about creating social media fame for themselves.
Yeah, it's like the psychology she uses, and you're right. She's actively campaigning. By the way, Jocelyn Benson is the one who's overseeing the election in the state of Michigan for Kamala Harris and these other far left candidates, and she is going on these far left networks saying that, listen, you can't believe if anyone ever tells you that there's any cheating going on, you refer them to that's disinformation, and that's the real danger. She's saying that is a dangerous idea to put in someone's mind that I personally might be allowing cheating to occur when in fact it's happened. All the evidence is being laid out right in front of all of us. So if you acknowledge it, you suddenly have become a danger to democracy. When in fact the opposite seems to be the case.
Yeah, yeah. Jocelyn Benson, just for instance, Jocelyn Benson in 2020 tried to weaken the signature verification on absentee ballot after they forced everyone to send absentee ballots in. Then she wanted to weaken signature verification to make it easier to cheat. Every step that they have taken with regard to election laws does not make the election more secure. They make it easier to cheat. And you have to ask yourself at some point why that is. And when you have a huge segment of our population here that maybe doesn't trust it, once in a while, you might want to take a step that actually makes the election more secure. But she refuses to do that at every step of the way. And the voter ID thing is the most amazing. We don't have a voter ID law here in Michigan. They try and claim that we do. I always show my ID because I want to be able to prove who I am. But if you don't have it, you can still vote in this state. You just have to sign a form and say you are who you say you are, and you get to vote. And let's say I did that, and I wasn't me. Somebody came in who wasn't Jamie Rowe, signed Jamie Rowe, and was allowed to vote and cast my ballot. I show up and I'm unable to vote. Okay, now how do you go check that other person? They didn't leave the real name.
Right.
How do you find them?
Right, you can't.
This idea that you're going to be guilty of a felony. Well, I'm not quite sure how they're going to find you after you've committed this crime. So voter ID just makes common sense in that 80% plus of the people of Michigan and America support having to show an ID before you vote. And for some reason, they always say that they're somehow racist because I don't know. They believe African Americans are incapable of getting driver's licenses. I mean, that's racist and ridiculous. I mean, 80% of African Americans support having to show voter ID
exactly.
in order to vote. It's
right.
insulting to people's intelligence to make it think that way. And quite honestly, this is why we need to elect a Republican Secretary of State and a Republican governor in the next election here in the state, because these people have done an awful lot of damage to our state and the integrity of this process.
They
we need to play by the rules as they exist right now, and we need to win.
Yeah.
This idea of swamp the vote, we need to swamp the vote.
Swamp the vote. Get out there early. And I completely agree with you. And this notion, and by the way, there's plenty of anecdotal evidence that I've had many people come to me say, Tom, I was just in the polling in 2022. They told me flat out I didn't really need my IDs. So many people didn't even bring their IDs, said it's not a problem. I don't think they even signed an affidavit to say they were who they were. They just let them vote. So that's been going on. It's now about to get a whole lot worse. I really appreciate you, and I've always appreciated your work, and that is continuing is phenomenal. Jamie Rowe is the founder of Team Rowe and has worked on Capitol Hill for many years, and obviously, as you just saw, knows his stuff very much. Jamie Rowe, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, take care.
And go
we'll talk again.
Vote early.
Yeah, vote early. Absolutely. By the way, I want to bring this up to our listeners and our viewers here. Undecided voters, They're still out there. It has shrunk from about 42% to 21% over the past 5 months, but there's still a significant amount of people who have not yet decided. And I mentioned earlier that poll that shows Donald Trump is now leading in Georgia. There's still a significant number of undecideds there. So that's why he's there trying to get their vote. But it is a narrowing pool of undecided voters, and it does suggest that that turnout in this election will be the decisive factor here. So get out there and cast your ballot. Major Democrats, major names, by the way, are getting behind Donald Trump's candidacy, as I kind of referred to just a few moments ago. We're going to talk about that in just a few moments. But first, I want to give a quick message from my dear friends. I know many of them, and I trust them at Executive Wealth Management. Wealth is very complex, but with the right partner, it doesn't have to be. Executive Wealth Management is dedicated to simplifying the complexities of managing your wealth by offering integrated solutions that cover every aspect of your financial life, every aspect of it, from retirement and financial planning to investment management and even tax and legal strategies. Executive Wealth Management brings it all together so you can focus on what matters most, living your life with confidence that you're going to be okay. Their team of experts works seamlessly together across all these key areas to ensure your financial future is secure and well managed. They take the stress out of wealth management by providing a comprehensive, personalized approach that is tailored to your unique needs. When I first met them a few years ago, I want to be with these people. They're fiduciaries, which means they have to do what's best for you, not for them. And that's what they do willingly anyhow. Discover how they can simplify your financial journey. Visit ewmadvisors.com, ewmadvisors.com, and learn more about their integrated wealth management solutions. It's Executive Wealth Management, ewmadvisors.com. Wealth is complex. They simplify it. I want to thank them very much, Executive Wealth Management. All right, let's go to this. Some headlines. Tulsi Gabbard joins GOP at the Trump rally and slams Democrats, and Liz Cheney as well. This is a big political shift. Former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has now announced that she is officially joining the Republican Party. That happened during this rally with Donald Trump in Greensboro, North Carolina. And Gabbard told the cheering crowd, we need strong leadership to fix what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have broken. The former Democrat, now a member of Donald Trump's transition team, called the Democratic Party unrecognizable and criticized both Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney for prioritizing power and war over the American people. Yeah, I mean, Liz Cheney was sitting there with Kamala Harris. She's like in this whole military-industrial complex. She was raised in that. Her dad, Dick Cheney, was one of the leaders in that, made a lot of money off of wars. Tulsi Gabbard praised Donald Trump for turning the GOP into what she described now the party of peace and the party of the people. Her message was clear. The Democrats have abandoned independent-minded voters. But they are welcomed with open arms by Trump and the Republican Party if they want to join him. But you're right, they have gotten rid of the voices strategically, I think, that oppose certain policies. And we've seen that over the past several years. Certain Democrats who don't want to go all in on all 9 months of abortion somehow have been censured by their own party. So Tulsi Gabbard's words seem strategically aimed at attracting independents in a very critical election year. One independent would be RFK Jr., right? He's behind Donald Trump, too. Elon Musk, essentially an independently minded individual. And all of this could help Donald Trump tip the scales in this election. It's a fresh voice that aligns with core GOP values. Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, her move, rightly underscores this broader, it is a rebranding of the GOP, maybe more accurate branding of the Republican Party, despite all the media pushback of who they say the GOP is. This is the reality of it, and more people are waking up to the big tent party of the GOP. It's a home for peace-seeking voters disillusioned by the establishment warmongers on really both sides of the political aisle. I think she was disillusioned by establishment warmongers. And then there's Liz Cheney. What happened to her? I think she's just been revealed to who she really is, and the Cheney family in general. Back in the day when Dick Cheney was vice president under George W. Bush, he seemed Republican, but there were accusations back then that he really wanted these wars to continue for greater profit. And you look back now, and yeah, there's a lot of lessons learned about who these people truly are, part of what they would call the swamp. And now Liz Cheney's alignment with Kamala Harris, it is fueling this anti-Trump sentiment, but that's the only thing I can think of. The only thing that I could see Liz Haley aligning with Kamala Harris, a far left radical activist, Marxist ideologue, is that she hates Donald Trump. That seems to be it. So Tulsi Gabbard rightly, I think, criticizes Liz Cheney, how this old Republican, these figures are aligning with progressive Democrats. Very unusual political alliances designed to block Trump. That's it. They have one common enemy, that's Donald Trump, who seems to be the president of peace and prosperity. So if somebody can explain it with common sense terms, great. Otherwise, it's just a hold on power by this current Democratic Party. And Tulsi Gabbard is right. It is a far cry from what the Democratic Party used to be in this country. So let's look at Vice President Kamala Harris. She's promising to champion the middle class while the Biden administration's electric vehicle mandate could spell a whole lot of trouble for many middle class and working Americans. The Environmental Protection Act's new rule requires 2/3 of all new cars sold by 2032 to be electric. That's the fact. But with most electric vehicles costing more than $56,000, a lot of people are now saying this is a luxury only the wealthy can afford. The middle class can afford those types of cars. They're far more expensive than the internal combustion engine vehicles. So Stephen Moore, he's a great economist. He works with the Heritage Foundation. He warns that the middle class, these families, are being priced out of the car market entirely. Even if they get the $7,500 tax credit, Moore says that EVs remain far beyond what many families can manage. You can't build a strong middle class by forcing people to buy cars they can't afford. And the polls are out there backing him. They reveal that nearly half of middle-income Americans are not even considering an electric vehicle. And Kamala Harris insists her policies will still benefit everyday Americans. She hasn't outlined how that will be, other than she says, I'm going to give you more money. So these other people pay for you to have a better income, these other taxpayers. It's an economic burden, these electric vehicles are. So the Biden-Harris mandate feels more like a penalty on working families than a solution. Gas prices potentially becoming scarce. Middle-class families might find it harder to meet their basic transportation needs. And her rhetoric, Kamala Harris's, about supporting the middle class, it does clash with a policy that seems designed for elites only and making the cost of living far more expensive for the rest of us. Affordability is not what they're focused on. If they were, they would expand access to reliable gas-powered cars and would remain an option. Donald Trump says he likes them all. He likes, electric vehicles, hybrids, gas cars. Put them all out there. As the technology catches up and it makes these EVs actually drivable in cold weather or in hot weather or in a storm, and you can find electric vehicle charging system that actually works, well, then maybe that'll become a greater option. But right now, the people don't want it, and they're sitting on car lots. And the auto dealers are losing tremendous amount of money by these cars not being able to sell because the public doesn't want them and they just can't afford them. Let's go to Israel now. Hezbollah has fired missiles into central Israel. This was triggering these air raid sirens and sending these residents. There's Antony Blinken there meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu there in Israel amid all of this that's going on. But that was from yesterday where you're looking at that video there. A lot of residents were just scrambling for shelter as Hezbollah does another attack. Fortunately, the attacks caused no reported injuries that we are aware of. That's Blinken meeting with Netanyahu there. Israel's missile defense, thankfully, intercepting most of those rockets. And it did come, this move did, just hours after the Israeli military struck Hezbollah naval base in Beirut. So good for them. That base reportedly housing military speedboats and used for operations targeting Israeli waters. They were destroyed in the overnight assault. Now, here's the issue, though. There's this fine line there happening in Israel, is that they don't want to strike the Lebanese army, which unfortunately that was part of it, and they made a mistake there. But they're trying to root out Hezbollah, which truly controls Lebanon. So the airstrikes, they targeted the Hezbollah weapons depots, the command centers of Hezbollah. There were some hidden underground areas within the Lebanese capital. It's Israel's military trying to emphasize that civilians were warned in advance. And, that's strategic. You have to avoid casualties, and they really want to do that. So they're putting out the warnings. If you can get out because we're coming in. In the meantime, Iran is rallying its Gulf neighbors, and they've warned of retaliation against any further Israeli military operations. Iran is getting more and more involved without these proxies kind of acting as a barrier. They've confirmed that Israeli attack for sure. So as I mentioned, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he did arrive in Israel amid all of this, these escalating tensions there, and they're trying to de-escalate all the conflict there in Israel. It's a pretty firm response to terrorism. Remember, Hezbollah is a terrorist organization. They are not anything that the United States should get behind. Same with Hamas, and same with the Houthis, and same for Iran, for that matter. And the precision of these operations shows that the military strength remains absolutely crucial in curbing the ambitions of these terrorists. Let's keep funding Israel's ability to fight back against these mobilizing Gulf nations that are surrounding Israel, and hopefully we can get more. As Jamie Rowe was just touching on, when Donald Trump was in office, he was able to get even Saudi Arabia to come around and partner with the state of Israel. It was about to happen, joining the Abraham Accords, but of course, what happens? Joe Biden wins the election, and all of that went to pot, and now Iran gained hundreds of billions of dollars in order to advance their strategic operations, their terrorists' intentions against the state of Israel, and of course against the United States is their ultimate goal as well. Now, by the way, Jill Stein, she's this Green Party candidate. I mentioned the abandoned Harris kind of momentum being developed in these Muslim communities, but what they're going to right there, like gentlemen like that, they're targeting Jill Stein. I mean, they want to support Jill Stein, who is an active, I don't know if I want to say anti-Semite, but she is absolutely opposed to Israel remaining in that state. So Abandon Harris officially was endorsed by Jill Stein earlier this month in Dearborn after a lot of frustration with the Biden-Harris administration's refusal to address their concerns. So this is a campaign, Abandon Harris, that started in the state of Michigan, which does have, I believe, still the largest Muslim population in the country. But it is expanding to other key states. And they don't like Kamala Harris. They certainly don't like Donald Trump either, but some Muslims do. And I mentioned earlier the mayor of Hamtramck, which I believe is the only city in the country to have an all-Muslim city council. They have now, or at least the mayor of Hamtramck has come behind to support Donald Trump because he believes that the Donald Trump and conservative policies and values and ethics much more aligned with what most Muslims would align with themselves in terms of ethics and morals, those types of things. And it's always boggled in my mind, why do so many Muslims support the Democratic Party? Because most Democrats don't truly believe in what Islam, in terms of their ethics, would support. So there's now a lot of key states like Wisconsin and Georgia. These are key battleground areas that Joe Biden narrowly won in 2020. So now this Abandon Harris campaign has gone into Wisconsin and Georgia, trying to strip away voters in those states as well. And they're even calling it Abandon Biden. Abandon Biden, Abandon Harris is the same thing, right? Polls do show that Harris and Stein are locked in a surprising battle for Muslim voters, with many shifting away from their traditional Democratic base. So this is all part of that splintering Democratic coalition that I talked about earlier with Jamie Rowe. So it could be a third-party surge. It could have an impact primarily on the Democratic Party, because Jill Stein seems to align more with them than far more with them than she would with the Republican Party. All right, want to get to your comments here. Always thank you for chiming in. Let's get Cameron to bring one by one them up on the screen here. Let's see who we have in terms of comments, right? Orlando Hodges. Tom, another great interview with Mr. Rose. Since we don't have a governor, a secretary of state, or attorney general election, how can we turn the ship around toward election integrity? Orlando, that is such an important question. The thing is we have to do, I think for me at least, is we're being told to be silent about this. Don't talk about the fact that what's truly happening. I had another conversation with some very common sense and sophisticated individuals explaining to me more of this overseas mail-in balloting drive that Democrats are supporting and what's really happening overseas. And there's some things that I wasn't aware of, and I try to keep on top of these things. So the first thing you got to do is to identify the problem. Because if people aren't aware of this, if they keep being told by these far left liberal reporters that none of this is really happening and this is conspiracy theory, but when it's happening right in front of our faces, we know it is. All you have to do is read these bills that are being passed in these various legislatures around the country, that they are making it far easier to cheat in this elections. Who in the right mind would ever support nobody requiring an identification to cast your ballot when you know for certain that not only domestic people, the people in this country want to cheat and want to stack as many ballots, and people have come out and admitted this. I mean, you can even go on YouTube and see it. It's that obvious. It's out there. They want to get as many people to vote as can. And they also are admitting that people in the Biden administration, they want as many illegal immigrants to come across the border, and they are helping them do that. I put that on Twitter this morning. If you want to check it out at Tom Jordan News, that's my Twitter account. Tom Jordan Live is also where you can find us. But it's stunning to me how, when you pull back the layer just a little bit, how clearly the Democrats that are in power right now want more people who are not eligible to vote. So take it back overseas, what's happening there. So it is true that at least in the state of Michigan, and I think in many other states where this might be even a federal law, I don't know that as of yet, but you can cast your ballot, say you're in Tehran, or you're overseas in, Beirut, or you're somewhere else in the world. Maybe it's Paris, France, whoever, and you're a member of the military, you can cast your ballot. But that's true for any American. If you're overseas, you're on vacation, you can cast your ballot from afar. It's that loose now that you can do that. But what they're allowing to have happen is that the secretaries of states, they can receive these ballots all the way up until November the 12th. November 12th, that is a week after the election. So what these scammers are doing, and what they will often do, because technically you're supposed to have a postmark by election day, November 5th, but again, just like voter ID, just like your own verification of your signature, they're ignoring those types of things now more and more. So the plan is that a lot of people are going to watch the returns on November 6th. And if Kamala Harris is just under it, they're going to start putting their ballots in and start mailing them in. You got 7 days for that ballot to arrive to a precinct or wherever in the state in which you're supposed to vote in. And if they get it by the 12th, then you're good. So they can stack the election that way. I mean, there's just all sorts of issues. So the first thing I think, Orlando, is to talk about it. And don't let people like Jocelyn Benson or Dana Nessel say, if you discuss this, you are now a threat, and we could come after you for what they call disinformation, or manipulating people's minds to believe, in their view, that something is true when it's not. The fact of the matter is the evidence is all around that we should be very concerned about these things. Election integrity used to matter to the vast majority of Americans. I think it still does, but we're being told it doesn't exist. So I don't know how you're right. We don't have a governor and a secretary of state or an AG election this time around. But I think courage. People just need to discuss this on a greater, level, and these platforms need to allow people to discuss this. And it's sad that it's not happening. From here on out, make sure that, and listen, if Donald Trump wins, I think he will partner up with various secretaries of state around the country, at least expose what they're really doing so voters out there can understand, wow, these people are the real purveyors of disinformation, and I'm not going to vote them back in. I think that's one of the best solutions. Orlando Hodges, thanks so much. Cameron, anything else? Let's get him up here. I know we have a few seconds left. Let's try to. All right, let's bring him up one by one. We'll try to get to maybe 2 or 3 here. Jordan Gens, always good to hear from you. If you'd like someone to explain it to you in common sense terms, I volunteer as tribute. I'm not sure which. Are you talking about the EVs? Is that EVs, electric vehicles? Okay, yeah. Common sense terms in terms of why people don't want electric vehicles. Yeah, Jordan, we are. I'm sorry, we are planning to have you on, so we'll reach out. We'll do our little messaging, and I'll get you my personal contact information as well, and we'll talk. Jordan, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Let's bring one more up. I think we have time. A few seconds left. Sharon Wheeler, they just don't know what they're getting themselves into, I think, which is dealing with evil Trump. He doesn't care about you. Sharon, I would love an example of that. What do you mean by that? Because he's meeting with people, just everyday folks like you and me, even meets with people that don't like him. And all the time, people just say he doesn't care about you. But what do you mean by that? How not? Does he not care about the economy? Does he not care about the illegal immigrants coming across the border? We need some details, Sharon, if you're going to do that again. All right, let's bring up one more comment here, and then we'll have to say adieu for now. Orlando Hodges is back. Don't you think that the Tulsi Gabbard announcement and the RFK Jr. endorsement has excited the Republican Party? It seems that the new GOP has become home to the working class. Yeah, I do think it has. And I actually think it's excited a lot of independents out there and some Democrats. And I think they're scratching their heads like, okay, well, if RFK Jr., whose name, the Kennedy name, is like synonymous with the Democratic Party, if even he has been an outspoken liberal for decades, is now saying, I've got to support Trump because he now aligns more with what I believe to be freedom and civil liberties and civil rights. I think that's waking up, yes, the Republican Party, those who don't want it, those are the never Trumpers, the independents, but also members of the Democratic Party. And same for Tulsi Gabbard. Orlando, always good to hear from you. And it's always good to hear from our listeners and our viewers here. Thanks for your time. Remember, we are on YouTube, Tom Jordan Live, on X, and on Facebook, and on Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts as well. Give us a try. Share us if you can. Just watch us all the way through. That helps us tremendously. We always appreciate the time you give to watch this program. Thanks so much. God bless you. We'll catch you next time.